My sister insisted I hand over my savings. I refused on the spot, booked a one-way flight overseas, and launched a new career. 2 hours later, Dad messaged, "Sign off on her mortgage or don't come back." By midnight, I shut down every account she could access, 57 furious calls by morning. My sister's voice, sweet as sugar, asked for $30,000. It wasn't the request that broke me, but the rage that followed my no, pushing me to a choice no one saw coming. The conference room hummed with distant chatter, but my world had gone eerily silent. A familiar dread coiled in my gut, because I knew this wasn't just about money, it was about everything. Being the responsible daughter has a hidden cost. People just assume your reliability is endless, that your savings account is a bottomless well for their emergencies, that your entire life can just pause whenever someone else needs a bailout. My sister, Chloe, learned this particular lesson the hard way. And honestly, once the dust settled, I slept better than I had in years. I'm Natalie, 32 years old. For the past decade, I'd been a financial analyst at a firm in Denver. Nothing flashy, but I earned decent money and lived well within my means. While Chloe bounced between retail jobs and questionable boyfriends, I saved. While she spent her 20s jet-setting on credit cards, posting Instagram photos from exotic beaches I couldn't even name, I was maxing out my 401k. Our parents? They'd praise her free spirit and tell me not to be so uptight about money. The favoritism wasn't subtle. Dad paid off Chloe's car when she totaled it, drunk driving at 24. Mom co-signed 3 different apartment leases after Chloe skipped out on rent. When I asked them for help with my grad school tuition, they said I was financially stable enough to handle it myself. I took out loans. Chloe got handouts. That was our family's pattern for as long as I could remember. Last March, Chloe called me at work. That should have been my first warning. She never called during business hours unless she wanted something big. But I answered anyway, stepping into the glass conference room as my colleagues analyzed quarterly reports without me. "Natalie, hey, so I need to talk to you about something important," she started, her voice doing that fake cheerful thing that always made my stomach drop. "Brendan and I found the perfect house. Absolutely perfect. 3 bedrooms, huge backyard, close to his work. The only problem is we need more for the down payment." Brendan was boyfriend number 7 or 8, a construction worker she'd been dating for 11 months. I'd met him twice. He seemed fine, in that generic way where you can't tell if someone has a personality or just agrees with everything. "Congratulations on finding a place," I said carefully, already knowing exactly where this conversation was headed. "So, here's the thing. We're short about $30,000. I know you have savings, and I thought maybe you could help us out. We'd totally pay you back once Brendan's promotion comes through. His boss basically promised it's happening this summer, $30,000? She said it like she was asking to borrow a jacket. "Chloe, I can't just give you $30,000, I replied, keeping my voice level despite the anger building in my chest. "That's my emergency fund. That's money I've spent 10 years saving." "But we're family," she whined, and I could practically hear the pout in her voice. "You make good money. You don't even have kids or a mortgage. What do you need all that money for anyway?" This was classic Chloe logic. My money wasn't really mine because I hadn't spent it yet. My stability was selfish. My planning was hoarding. I need it for my future, I told her. For when I want to buy a house, or start a business, or deal with an actual emergency. The answer is no. She hung up on me. Within an hour, Mom called, asking why I couldn't help my sister during an important life milestone. Within 2 hours, Dad left a voicemail about family obligations and not forgetting where I came from. The pressure campaign lasted 3 days. Texts, calls, relentless guilt trips. Chloe sent me Zillow listings, as if seeing granite countertops would somehow change my mind. Mom reminded me about all the times Chloe shared with me growing up, which apparently meant the time she let me borrow her Discman in 1998. Then Chloe showed up at my apartment. She'd clearly been crying. Mascara smudged under her eyes, carrying that oversized purse she bought with money she didn't have. "Natalie, please," she begged, standing in my doorway. "This house is everything to me and Brendan. We'll lose it if we don't come up with the money by next week. You're my sister. You're supposed to have my back." Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the sheer entitlement. Maybe it was the decade of watching her make terrible choices while everyone applauded her authenticity. Maybe it was just pure exhaustion. "I'm not giving you my savings," I said quietly. "Go home, Chloe." Her tears dried up instantly. "You're a selfish expletive," she spat. "Mom was right about you. You act all superior because you have money, but you're just cold. Brendan said you probably would be like this." She left, slamming my door hard enough that my neighbor poked his head out to check if everything was okay. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door, feeling something shift in my chest. It wasn't guilt. It was clarity. I'd been planning to take some vacation time anyway. My boss had been encouraging me to use my accumulated paid time off for months. That evening, I opened my laptop and started researching. Dubai had been hiring financial analysts for international firms, and I'd always wondered about working abroad. The pay was better, the opportunities seemed incredible, and suddenly, the idea of being an ocean away from my family sounded less like escape and more like profound freedom. By midnight, I'd submitted 3 applications. By morning, I had 2 interviews scheduled via video call. The whole process moved faster than I expected, partly because I was qualified, and partly because the firms were actively recruiting experienced analysts. Within 2 weeks, I had a job offer from a wealth management firm in Dubai. The salary was 40% higher than my current position. They'd cover relocation costs, and they were willing to expedite the work visa process. Their human resources department explained they had a relationship with Dubai's Ministry of Manpower that allowed for faster employment pass processing for senior hires, typically 2 to 3 weeks instead of the usual month or more. I gave notice at my Denver job, telling them I'd need to leave in 5 weeks to coordinate with my visa approval and relocation. My boss was disappointed but understanding and wrote me a glowing recommendation letter. I sold most of my furniture, shipped boxes of essentials, and started researching neighborhoods in Dubai. My apartment lease was month to month, so I wasn't breaking any contracts. My visa approval came through in 3 weeks, right on schedule. Everything fell into place with eerie ease. I didn't tell my family. Why would I? They'd only try to stop me or make it about how my leaving affected them. The day before my flight, I went to the bank and restructured my accounts. Years ago, Mom had convinced me to add her as an authorized user on my savings account, just in case something happened to me. I'd been 23 and stupid enough to think this was normal. I removed her authorization, transferred everything to a new account at a different bank, one with no connection to my family. I also changed my address with the post office, rerouted my mail, and updated all my financial institutions. Then I bought my one-way ticket to Dubai. I texted Mom and Dad a simple message, moving abroad for work. Flight leaves tomorrow. I'll send my new contact info once I'm settled. Then I turned off my phone. The flight was 13 hours with a layover in Seoul. I watched movies, ate the questionable airplane food, and felt lighter than I had in years. No one knowing where I was felt like absolute freedom. The weight of family obligation, the constant guilt trips, the expectation that I bankroll everyone else's poor choices, all of it fell away somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. During the layover at Incheon Airport, I grabbed coffee and checked my email one last time before fully disconnecting. My new employer had sent a welcome package with apartment details, office location, and a starter guide for expats. Reading through it made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. I was actually doing this, leaving behind everything familiar for a complete restart. Part of me expected to feel scared or uncertain. Instead, I felt energized. The coffee helped, but it was more than caffeine. For the first time in my adult life, every decision I made was purely mine. No one to consult, no one to placate, no one to convince that I deserved to prioritize myself. I thought about all the times I'd compromised. When I was 25 and wanted to take a lower-paying job at a nonprofit that aligned with my values, Dad told me I was being impractical and that I owed it to the family to maximize my earning potential. When I was 28 and dated a teacher named Noah who made less money than me, Mom kept making pointed comments about financial security and dropping hints about how Chloe's boyfriends always provided well. Noah and I broke up 3 months later, partly because family dinners had become unbearable. Every choice had been filtered through what my family needed or wanted. My career path, my relationships, my living situation, all of it shaped by their expectations for my entire adult life. Chloe could date unemployed musicians and get called adventurous. I dated a teacher with a stable job and got lectures about settling. The double standard was exhausting. On the second flight, I sat next to a woman in her 60s who was visiting her daughter in Dubai. We started talking after she complimented my carry-on bag, and somehow the conversation drifted to families. I didn't tell her everything, but I mentioned I was moving abroad for work and feeling relieved about the distance. "Smart girl," she said, patting my hand. "I love my family, but sometimes you need an ocean between you and them to remember who you are." My daughter moved to Dubai 15 years ago, and it was the best thing for her. She comes home for Christmas. We video chat on Sundays, and nobody's suffocating anybody. Her words stayed with me. The idea that distance could improve relationships rather than destroy them felt revolutionary. My family acted like my moving abroad was a betrayal, but maybe it was actually the healthiest thing I could do. Maybe I'd spent so many years being angry and resentful that we couldn't see each other clearly anymore. Or maybe they'd always seen me as a resource rather than a person, and distance would simply make that obvious. I landed in Dubai on a Thursday morning, exhausted but energized. The humidity hit me the moment I left the airport, along with the realization that I'd actually done it. I'd left. The company had arranged a temporary serviced apartment in a neighborhood called Al Bersha while I looked for permanent housing, a mix of old and new architecture that felt both foreign and welcoming. After sleeping for 12 hours straight, I finally turned on my phone. 57 missed calls, 38 text messages, 12 voicemails, all from family members. I made tea and started going through them chronologically. The first few from Mom were confused. "Natalie, what do you mean abroad? Call me back right now." Then Dad chimed in, "This is ridiculous. Come home so we can talk about this properly." Chloe's messages escalated quickly. "Are you seriously running away because I asked for help? Grow up." But the real explosion happened after they discovered I'd restructured my accounts. Mom had apparently tried to withdraw my money, to give to Chloe for her house down payment. The authorization had been revoked, and the bank told her she no longer had access. Dad's text came at what would have been 2 a.m. my time, late evening for them: "Sign off on Chloe's mortgage as a cosigner or don't bother coming back. You owe this family after all we've done for you. This is non-negotiable." I stared at that message for a long time. Sign off on a mortgage for a sister who called me a selfish expletive? Tie my credit to her financial irresponsibility? Guarantee a loan for someone who had never paid me back for anything, not even the $50 she borrowed for gas in 2019? The audacity was almost impressive. They hadn't just asked me to sacrifice my savings. Now they wanted me to legally obligate myself to Chloe's mortgage. If she defaulted, which seemed inevitable given her track record, my credit would be destroyed. I'd be responsible for payments on a house I'd never live in, for a sister who called me cold and selfish. And Dad presented this as non-negotiable. As if he had any authority over my life anymore, as if I owed them something after they'd spent 30 years making me feel guilty for not being Chloe. I made myself tea. The apartment came with an electric kettle and some complimentary tea bags, and I sat by the window watching Dubai wake up. Street vendors were setting up their stalls. Early morning joggers passed by. The city moved with a purpose and energy that felt nothing like Denver. Here, I was nobody. No one knew me as the responsible daughter, or the uptight sister, or the family bank account. I could be anyone. I could become someone entirely new. The thought was intoxicating. I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet, something that always helped me think clearly. I listed every time my family had asked me for money or financial help over the past decade. The numbers were staggering. I'd loaned Dad $3,000 for car repairs that he never repaid. I'd covered Mom's dental work for $4,200 because her insurance wouldn't cover it, and she promised to pay me back in installments that never materialized. I'd given Chloe smaller amounts constantly, $200 here, $300 there, sometimes weekly during her rough patches. One month I'd given her $1,200 because she couldn't make rent and needed grocery money. Another time, $800 for a security deposit. $1,000 when her boyfriend left and she needed to cover bills alone. Adding it up, I'd given my family over $38,000 in the past 10 years. Money I categorized in my budgets as family support and convinced myself was normal. Money they'd accepted without gratitude and certainly without repayment. Chloe wanted $30,000 more for a house down payment. And now they wanted me to co-sign for hundreds of thousands in mortgage debt. Where did it end? When would I have given enough? What magical amount would finally make me a good daughter and sister? The answer was clear. There was no amount. They would take until I had nothing left. And then they'd resent me for not having more to give. My whole life had been building toward this moment. The moment I finally understood I would never be enough for them, no matter what I sacrificed. I actually laughed out loud in my Dubai apartment at 4 a.m, the sound echoing off unfamiliar walls. Instead of responding, I started making calls. I contacted my credit card companies and put fraud alerts on my accounts. I changed passwords on every financial platform I used. I called my old bank and confirmed no one could access my newly restructured accounts. Then I logged into the few remaining shared services I'd forgotten about, my primary Costco membership where Mom was listed as the household cardholder, a shared Spotify family plan, even the Netflix account they all used. I canceled everything. Every single shared service, every connection point, every tiny thread that tied me financially to my family. By the time the sun rose over Dubai, I'd severed every access point they might have had to my money or my accounts. The calls started coming in around 6 a.m. my time. I was eating breakfast at a hawker center near my apartment, trying chicken rice for the first time, when my phone started buzzing non-stop. I silenced it and kept eating. Eventually, I listened to a few voicemails. Mom was crying, saying I destroyed the family and that Chloe's house deal fell through because they couldn't come up with a full down payment. Dad called me ungrateful and selfish, his voice shaking with rage. Chloe left 7 separate voicemails, each angrier than the last, culminating in a screaming rant about how I'd ruined her life and she'd never forgive me. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years sent messages calling me heartless. An aunt I barely knew lectured me about respecting my elders. Chloe's boyfriend, Brendan, somehow got my number and sent texts about what a stuck-up expletive I was and how Chloe deserved better family. I blocked them all. Every single number. Then I ate more chicken rice and walked along the Dubai River, watching the boats and tourists, feeling absolutely nothing but relief. Work started the following Monday. My new team was international, with colleagues from India, Australia, Britain, Malaysia, and China. Nobody knew my history. Nobody expected me to fund their dreams. I was just Natalie, the new financial analyst who was good at building portfolio strategies and terrible at remembering to bring an umbrella during sudden rainstorms. The office was located in the financial district, a gleaming tower with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Burj Khalifa. My first day involved the usual onboarding paperwork and introductions, but what struck me most was the atmosphere. People actually left at reasonable hours. They took their full lunch breaks. When someone mentioned needing to leave early for a doctor's appointment, nobody made passive-aggressive comments or acted like it was an inconvenience. My desk was in an open-plan area with 7 other analysts. To my left was Maya, a woman from Delhi who'd been with the firm for 3 years and immediately offered to show me the best lunch spots nearby. To my right was Liam, an Australian guy with a dry sense of humor who'd moved to Dubai from Melbourne 8 months ago. "You're from the States?" Liam asked during our morning coffee break on day 2. "What brought you to Dubai?" I kept it simple. Wanted a change. Better opportunities here. He nodded like this made perfect sense. Same. Melbourne's great, but the pay here is better and the work is more interesting. Plus, you're in the center of everything. Can hop to Thailand for the weekend, visit Japan, explore Indonesia. It's brilliant. Nobody asked probing questions about why I'd really left. Nobody needed my life story or wanted to dig into my family dynamics. The professional boundaries were refreshing. We could be friendly without being invasive, collegial without being codependent. My boss, a Malaysian woman named Lena, was brilliant and demanding in the best way. She pushed me to think differently about risk assessment and client relations. The work was challenging enough to keep me focused, and the office culture actually respected work-life balance in a way my Denver job never had. I made friends slowly. My neighbor, a teacher from Canada named Daniel, invited me to a weekly trivia night at a bar in Jumeirah Beach residence. Through trivia, I met others, a nurse from the Philippines, a software developer from Germany, an accountant from Australia. We became our own little international family, bonded by shared exile and cheap beer. 3 months in, I got an email from my old Denver firm. They'd been purchased by a larger company, and several people were laid off. I jumped ship at exactly the right time. My savings, the ones I'd refused to hand over, allowed me to comfortably furnish my new apartment and travel on weekends. I visited Malaysia, explored Thailand, took a weekend trip to Indonesia. Money I'd saved by being selfish funded experiences I'd never have had if I'd given in to family pressure. On one of those weekend trips to Ho Chi Minh City, I met up with an old college friend named Ava, who'd been teaching English in Asia for 5 years. We hadn't been close in school, but distance and shared experience had a way of creating unexpected connections. Over street food and cheap beer, I told her the whole story. "That's insane," Ava said, shaking her head. $30,000 plus co-signing a mortgage? What were they thinking? They were thinking I'd say yes, like I always did. I admit it. Every other time they asked for something, I gave it. I trained them to see me as an ATM. Ava stirred her foe thoughtfully. "You know what's wild? I bet they're telling everyone back home that you abandoned the family for no reason. Bet you're the villain in this story." She was probably right. I could imagine the narrative they crafted. Poor Chloe, just trying to buy her first home, and her cruel sister refused to help and ran away to Asia. My parents would play the victims, too, bewildered by their ungrateful daughter who threw away family bonds over money. They'd conveniently forget the part where they demanded I co-sign a mortgage or be disowned. They'd erase the years of one-sided financial support. They'd rewrite history to make themselves sympathetic and me heartless. And honestly, I didn't care anymore. Let them tell whatever story they wanted. I knew the truth, and that was enough. The thing is, I told Ava, I'm happier now than I've been in years, maybe ever. I wake up without that constant knot in my stomach, wondering what they'll ask for next. My money is mine. My time is mine. My life is actually mine. Ava raised her beer to selfish, expletive, who choose themselves. We clinked bottles and laughed, and the Ho Chi Minh City night buzzed around us with possibility. Back in Dubai, I continued building my new life, brick by brick. I joined a gym near my apartment and started attending evening yoga classes. The instructor, a serene woman named Amara, taught us about releasing things that no longer served us. During one particularly intense hip-opening sequence, I found myself crying unexpectedly. Not from sadness, but from relief, like my body was finally processing years of holding tension and resentment. After class, Amara approached me. "First time that's happened?" she asked gently. I nodded, wiping my eyes. "Sorry, that was embarrassing." "Don't apologize. The body stores what the mind tries to forget. You're releasing something. That's good." I started going to yoga 3 times a week. Each class felt like peeling off another layer of old expectations and obligations. By month 4, I could do crow pose. By month 5, I'd stopped checking if my family had tried to contact me through new channels. Chloe tried reaching out through a new number once. The message said, "Mom had a health scare. You should call." I almost fell for it until I checked Mom's Facebook page and saw she'd posted photos from her book club meeting that same day, looking perfectly healthy and complaining about the wine selection. I didn't respond. 6 months into my Dubai life, I got a LinkedIn message from Dad's email. He typed up a long apology that somehow managed to blame me for everything while asking if I could send a little money since Mom's car needed repairs. I archived it without responding. The truth is, cutting off my family didn't hurt the way I thought it would. There was relief instead of guilt, freedom instead of obligation. The people who claimed to love me had really just loved what I could provide. My bank account mattered more than my happiness. My willingness to sacrifice defined my worth. Dubai taught me what healthy relationships looked like. Lena became a mentor who celebrated my successes without expecting anything in return. Daniel and the trivia crew showed up when I had the flu, bringing soup and medicine without keeping score. A guy I'd started dating, an engineer from Ireland named Ethan, split bills fairly and never once asked about my savings account balance. These people liked me for me. What a concept! A year after leaving, I got a wedding invitation in the mail. Chloe was marrying Brendan. The invitation had been forwarded through my old Denver address to my new one, and someone had scrawled "We miss you" across the back in Mom's handwriting. The wedding was in 3 months. No note, no apology, just the assumption that I'd show up and play happy family. The invitation was expensive, thick cardstock with gold embossing, the kind that cost $3 or $4 per piece. I wondered who paid for it. Probably Mom and Dad, adding to the tally of money they'd spend on Chloe while telling me I needed to be more self-sufficient. I studied the invitation for a long time, reading the formal wording: "Chloe Marie Thompson and Brendan James Patterson request the honor of your presence." The ceremony was at a vineyard an hour outside Denver. The reception promised dinner, dancing, and an open bar. Bless Chloe, she'd won the fairy tale wedding, even if she couldn't afford it. For a moment, I imagined flying back, putting on a nice dress, sitting in those uncomfortable vineyard chairs while Chloe walked down the aisle toward a guy she barely knew. I'd make small talk with relatives who'd called me selfish. I'd hug parents who'd threatened to disown me. I'd smile for photos that would go on Facebook with captions about family, love, and togetherness. The fantasy made me feel ill. Ethan found me staring at the invitation that evening. We'd been dating for 3 months at that point, long enough that he knew the basics of my family situation, but not every painful detail. "Wedding invitation?" he asked, reading over my shoulder. "Your sister?" Yeah. 3 months from now in Denver. He sat down next to me on the couch. "Are you thinking about going?" "I don't know. Part of me thinks I should. That maybe enough time has passed, or that weddings are different. Or..." I trailed off, not sure how to articulate the confused tangle of emotions. "But?" Ethan prompted gently. "But nothing's changed. No one's apologized. They just expect me to show up and pretend everything's fine because that's what I've always done. I'm the one who's supposed to be the bigger person, the one who forgives and forgets and makes everyone comfortable." Ethan was quiet for a moment. My uncle was like that in our family. Always the peacemaker, always smoothing things over. He spent 40 years managing everyone else's emotions and conflicts. Then he had a heart attack at 53, died before the ambulance arrived. I looked at him, surprised by the story. At his funeral, Ethan continued, my aunt said something I've never forgotten. She said he'd spent so much energy keeping everyone else happy that he forgot to take care of himself. She said watching him die taught her that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect your own peace. His words settled into me like stones finding the bottom of a river. I'm not going, I said finally. I'm sending back the RSVP marked decline. Ethan nodded. Seems healthy to me. I sent back the RSVP card marked decline with no explanation. 2 days later, Mom called from a number I hadn't blocked yet. I answered out of curiosity. Natalie, please come to your sister's wedding, she said, her voice tired. Enough time has passed. We can move forward. Has Chloe apologized? I asked. Silence. Has Dad apologized? More silence. Have any of you acknowledged that demanding my life savings and threatening to disown me was wrong? We're family, Mom said. Family forgives. Family doesn't treat each other like ATM machines, I replied. I'm happy in Dubai. I have a good life. I'm not coming back to pretend everything's fine when nothing was ever fine. You've changed, she said sadly. Yes, I agreed. I have. I hung up and blocked that number too. The wedding happened without me. I saw photos on social media through a coworker who was friends with my cousin. Chloe looked beautiful in a dress that probably cost more than my first car. Brendan looked the same as I remembered, generically pleasant, forgettable. Mom and Dad smiled for the camera. Everyone seemed happy enough. I spent that Saturday hiking Safa Park with Ethan, sweating through the humidity and laughing about absolutely nothing important. We got laksa afterward, the spicy soup burning my mouth in the best way. This was my life now. Simple, peaceful, mine. The photos kept surfacing over the next few days. Chloe and Brendan cutting a massive 4-tier cake. Their first dance under string lights. A shot of Mom crying happy tears while Dad's arm was around her shoulders. The whole extended family gathered for a group photo. Everyone dressed up and smiling. I looked at that group photo for a long time. There were cousins I'd grown up with, aunts and uncles who'd been at every holiday. Grandparents who'd passed down their recipes and their stories. All of them together in one place, celebrating Chloe's big day. And I didn't miss it. Not even a little. That realization was startling. I'd expected to feel some pang of regret or loss, some grief for the family connection I'd severed. Instead, I felt relieved that I hadn't subjected myself to that performance. Relieved that I wasn't in those photos, pretending everything was fine while my stomach churned with resentment. Liam from work noticed I was distracted on Monday during our coffee break. He asked if everything was okay. My sister got married this weekend, I said. I didn't go. Just seeing photos online and processing it. Rough, he said sympathetically. Family stuff is complicated. The thing is, I'm not actually sad, I admitted. I'm just surprised that I'm not sad. Does that make sense? Liam laughed. Mate, half the people I grew up with in Melbourne, I haven't talked to in years. My brother and I barely speak. Sometimes people drift apart, and that's okay. Doesn't mean something's wrong with you. Just means you grew in different directions. His casual acceptance of familial distance was comforting. In my family, any relationship that wasn't constantly maintained and performed was treated like a failure. But maybe some relationships were meant to fade. Maybe not every connection needed to be preserved at all costs. Sometimes people ask if I regret cutting off my family. The answer is complicated. I regret that they made it necessary. I regret that their love came with price tags and conditions. I regret that I spent so many years thinking their dysfunction was normal. But I don't regret leaving. I don't regret protecting my money and my future. I don't regret those 57 missed calls or the angry voicemails I deleted without fully listening to. Every boundary I set, every account I closed, every connection I severed, those were acts of self-preservation, not cruelty. Chloe eventually divorced Brendan 18 months after the wedding. I heard through the family grapevine that reached me via an old college friend. Apparently, he'd been hiding debt and had a gambling problem. The house they bought, the one they desperately needed my $30,000 for, went into foreclosure. They'd scraped together enough for a down payment by borrowing from multiple family members, none of whom got paid back. Mom sent one final email to my work address, which she must have found through some serious internet stalking. She said Chloe was struggling, that the divorce was hard, that maybe I could reach out as the bigger person. I deleted it. Being the bigger person had meant being the family doormat for 31 years. I was done with that role. Chloe was an adult who made her own choices. She chose to marry a man she barely knew. She chose to buy a house she couldn't afford. She chose to build her life on financial quicksand while calling me selfish for refusing to sync with her. Those were her decisions. The consequences were hers to handle. My life in Dubai is beautiful. I got promoted to senior analyst last month. Ethan and I moved in together, splitting a flat with a balcony overlooking the Miracle Garden. Lena is helping me prepare for my CFA exams. Daniel and I won trivia last week for the 3rd time this year. I joined a gym, started taking Mandarin classes, learned to cook laksa that doesn't taste like sadness. None of this would have happened if I'd given Chloe my savings. I'd be broke, resentful, and still living in Denver, wondering why I always came last in my own family. That version of Natalie would have co-signed the mortgage. That version would have shown up to the wedding with a smile and a generous check. That version would still be answering guilt-trip phone calls at midnight. I'm grateful I'm not her anymore. The 57 calls that came in during those first 24 hours taught me something important. When you stop being useful, you discover who actually loves you. The people who stayed angry were the ones who'd lost access to my resources. The people who respected my boundaries were the ones worth keeping. Sometimes I wonder if Chloe and I could have had a real relationship if money hadn't poisoned everything. Maybe in another life we'd be sisters who actually talked, who supported each other without keeping score, who celebrated successes instead of competing. But that's not the family I got. And I'm done mourning what could have been. These days, I send postcards to old friends from Denver. I video chat with former coworkers who left that company, too. I've built a chosen family from scratch in a country I'd never visited before that March when everything changed. And when I look at my bank account, the one no family member can access, the one I built through years of careful planning, I don't see selfishness. I see freedom. I see choices. I see a future that belongs entirely to me. That's worth more than any house, any family obligation, any guilt trip my parents could manufacture. I left Denver with one suitcase and a one-way ticket. I arrived in Dubai with possibilities. What does freedom look like to you?